3, which in our timeline, we're moving to 20th century changes. So as I had talked about Monday, from a land perspective, most of the changes were not in the type of land cover per se, but the way the land was used. So we talked about farming going from extensive to very intensive agricultures and the rise of all the yields and the type of plants that were grown here. But there were also a lot of changes, obviously, in culture and technology and in the households. So in the 20th century, you're looking at, in the early 20th century, the rollout of electricity, everybody having modern plumbing, and then after kind of World War II, you know, as many of you here know, either from personal experience or from your parents, my father growing up on the farm always talked about in the 1950s in Iowa how everything was metal. You know, there was not plastic, this, that, or the other. There was no running to town to spend another $5 on something. It was, I'm going to forget the phrase now, use it up, wear it out, make do or do without, something like that. That was the motto and the only option on the farm before kind of we adopted a more disposable culture, which there have been some benefits, certainly for some of those technologies with medicine and everything else, but I think there are a lot of old ways that myself as a child of the 80s was not familiar with a lot of these old technologies for how do you iron your clothes, how do you put back a button on, and do all these common household tasks before the advent of plastic and disposable things. And so we're going to take a trip back in time. Sister Linda is going to be kind of in the middle of the room, I think, showing, and she's going to have them here so that you all can see them easier. She went up to the museum and got down a lot of household items that were here, and is going to talk with us about some of those changes and some of the ways that used to get everything done.
And from the very get-go, I just invite you, if you have something like you saw your grandmother using this, or great-grandmother, or anything you want to add to it, let's just make this very informal. But you know, when we read in books things like she went down to the river and got some water, we kind of put it into our context. Okay, she walked down there, she got the water, she brought it home. But we forget that probably it was not a lightweight bucket. Probably was a wooden bucket. And then you put the water in it and think how much heavier it gets. And then you remember, oh yeah, it wasn't paved to get down to that river. She had a terrain to manage, and one bucket didn't do it for the day. So it's just, you know, kind of putting things into the reality of yesteryear. And there was no plastic, as Adam mentioned. And things had to be cherished and taken care of, because of the fact that it wasn't easy to get another one or make another one. And the ingenuity of people, how they got things done in spite of not having electricity and all those things that we take for granted. And so I thought it might be a little fun just to talk about, I'm going to say what we have today, and then see if you can look on the card and say, oh, that's what they had to use in yesteryear. So we'll just start with the easy one here. Today we have the LED bulb. Do you see anything on the cart that says what? From the lantern, yes. This is from yesteryear. And what did they put in lanterns? Coal oil, kerosene. Did you ever try to read by one of those lamps? My uncle and aunt had one of those. I mean, that's all they had. They did not have electricity. And when I went to their house, it was just feeling your way around because it was so dark and you couldn't read. And the smoke that came from it, the fumes, were very nasty. So, but that was used here. How about today we have a thermostat. What did they have back 100 years ago? It's a fireplace. And what would you need for the fireplace? There you go. The bellows, which got the fire going. Yep, you pump the air on it. Yeah. Have you seen that by people's fireplaces nowadays? They use it for ornament, but it was pretty vital back in those days. When things begin to smolder, you gave it another poof, poof, poof. The bellows. Thank you. Okay, today we have car vacuums, nice little handy-dandy things with batteries in them. I'm going to have to tell you, this is, I will read it to you. It's kind of cute. It says, this is called a Stubby Duster. You keep it in this holder when it's not in use, and it's small enough to carry in your car. Oh, yeah. And then when filled with dust, you wash it in gasoline or soap and water, dry thoroughly, then comb out the wool with coarse comb, and little Mr. Stubby will be good as new. This one is wool.
Oh, that one's wool.
Yeah, sometime it was turkey feathers, but this one's wool. Call Mr. Stubby. So today we have an electric blanket. When we get chilled, we turn it up. And what might they have done in yesteryear? If your feet were getting cold, some people said that they used to warm bricks, wrap them in a cloth, and put them by your feet. Well, we just got a little fancy thing going here. It's called the Henderson foot warmer. And you filled it with hot water. And what do you call that? It's made out of? It's kind of like a ceramic. Really? Does it say anything, May?
Massachusetts. Made in Boston, Massachusetts. But very heavy.
Probably by Paul Revere. No. Yeah. We lost the cork. Yeah, there's a cork. So today we have a sink and we have a shower and we get up in the morning and we just take care of ourselves so easily. What do you think people had to use before the sink and the shower? Do you see anything on the card? Yes, yes. We have the basin and the pitcher. Yeah, and that is what you use to wash, so conservation of water. And when we were young here, we had not quite so fancy of a one, but each one of us had one in our room. And yeah, and you got up in the morning and you used it for everything. Yeah. Huh?
Talk about that in the washrooms. How the gang washrooms.
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
When we entered, I think there were not so many toilets and sinks, and everything was in one place. Like each hallway had a gang bathroom, or where there were like 2 or 3 tubs and 2 or 3 sinks and maybe 4 toilets, and they were all encased with that wooden partition, not a plastic partition, a wooden partition. Yeah. Like on the 5th floor, if you've ever been up to the 5th floor, they were like that. So talk about multiplication of the use of water. Since we have opened this huge building to other kinds of living, it's a massive change in the water usage. And in the water that is drained out and has to be purified. So.
I just kind of laugh to think we have 50 Andrean seniors that come for their Kairos retreat, telling them they all have to bathe and shower in the same room with the same water. Might lose a customer.
Oh, I know girls that went home. No. Yeah.
Did lose a customer.
Oh, sorry.
It wasn't really that we bathed with the same water. No, 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 no.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so today we have scales and they're digitalized and automated, and so what do you see on here that would have taken a lot longer time to weigh something? Pretty evident, isn't it? Yeah, and I don't know if you want to lift that, May. First of all, it's very heavy, made out of metal, and it has 2 weights on it. And it was used to weigh bread dough because we made lots of bread here and lots of long loaves about like that. And so you would weigh the dough on there and make sure that that's the right amount for that pan. It took time. It took patience. Too heavy, maybe. Yeah. So, does anybody remember that in the bakery? Yeah, I do. Okay, today we have zippers and Velcro. How did things get put together, clothing get put together in yesteryear? Sometimes buttons, yes. Laces. Safety pin. This right here. Again, very heavy. What does it say on the side of it? It's an Eyelet Press, 1907. Turn it around. Only use genuine challenge eyelets with this press. Imitation eyelets will ruin the press. So eyelets are those little things that press the material together and have a little metal ring, and it holds it. And so that's how you got it into the material. You put it under there and press down. The lever goes down, yeah.
Kind of like what's on your Levi jeans and stuff?
Yeah, but the material came through the center. Uh-huh.
So the dabs were...
I don't know. The bling. Okay. Okay, we all know that irons are very handy, and you plug them in, and they get hot really, really fast. And first of all, this thing must weigh 10 pounds. It is cast iron and has nothing except you put it flat on the stove to get it hot enough, and then you used it very quickly to iron, and then put it back on the stove, so you had a series of them so you could keep it hot. And you kept picking them up and ironing. But can you imagine the housewives doing that? And
Alice might eat this. Iron those sheets.
Right. Just to follow up on this, because, iron conducts heat. The heat would go into, and the women could get their hands burned, so they used to put lots of rags around it in order to keep it, from burning them. And then a little later, somebody with a brain in their head said that wood does not conduct heat, and so they began to put wood handles on these then, so that women wouldn't get all burnt.
thanks. So you want to clean your carpet today? Of course, you get your... Whoa, we have another one.
We had one generation beyond this where the handle was detached, and then we had 3 of the bottom, and so you could have 2 on the stove while you were ironing, and then you would change the handle from this one to that one, and so we could keep ironing without having to wait in between.
Very good. Thank you. So back to the carpet, where you're vacuuming your carpet, that you use a vacuum cleaner. But, we didn't have those, so when the carpet got really bad, we took it outside, and what'd you use? You use snow in the winter?
Yeah, that was in Europe. That's what they did anyway. They used take your rug outside and put the snow on it, and it picked up dirt and turned it over and brushed more snow on it. And
I think that's pretty ingenious. That's great. Now, there's a carpet beater. That would be for a small carpet. The bigger carpet, the bigger the beater, and you just kept beating, and the dust kept flying, and you got it as clean as you could get it.
I'm sort of glad my mom didn't have one of those. I'm pretty sure it would have found its way to my backside. And I would have deserved it.
So today when we want to get some soap suds going, we of course would squirt it out of a bottle or we use a diffuser or whatever. But of course we made our soap back then, and that was quite strong. And you put it in a little sudser, that's the right word for it. And then you just kept running it through the water until you got it to where you wanted the suds to be. And then of course after a while you had to keep doing it again. And yeah, I think it was made out of lye, wasn't it? Uh-huh. Yeah. Lye and fat. I just brought this because it is what the nurses used, I think, before World War II. Let me see. Okay. In the 1930s, the nurses carried this for night duty, but I'm telling you, it is heavy. So, you know that Florence Nightingale picture like this? I don't think you could have done it that long. But it's very heavy. I suppose it's the battery that makes it so heavy and the metal. Yeah, just a kind of little neat piece. Huh? Protection.
The nurses, that came from Gary. The nurses in the nursing, you know, where they stayed, their home, they would use that to go from the hospital to the nurses' quarters, you know, because it was a building that was away from the hospital a bit, on the same piece of property, but still. So that was also a safety device for them, because there were no overhead lights for them.
Thank you, thank you. I think we just have, oh yeah, we have the percolator. But today, of course, you know how easy it is to have a Keurig or something else. But this had to sit on the stove and perk away, and hope the coffee grounds didn't get into it. So you might have to strain it then. So, and again, very heavy. Everything's made of metal. And you know, this is a little gadget for measuring the size of your egg. So you put your egg up here, and it told you how big it was. Kind of cute, isn't it? With the amount of chickens we had, I don't think they did this one by one. Very similar? Uh-huh. Yeah, that's what Sister Mary just said. Yeah, they used it on the farm. Extra large. That's cute. That's cute. Why don't you invite them up for, or say that you have many more things upstairs? Would you like to say something like that? I do? Oh, yeah. Oh, did you all get to see that? So we had sisters who taught and sisters who nursed and sisters who took care of the house, and that was her duty, was to make the candles. One of her many duties. Yeah, I didn't know that, but yeah, I think you're right. So this is a candle mold dating back to the late 1800s. Anybody want to say anything about it? I don't know a lot about stuff like
that. Yeah, you think about it. You did not buy candles for the altar, and you, of course, didn't have electricity. So you had to keep making candles almost constantly, made of tallow, because you were supplying not only to keep lights on in the convent, but our sisters also had charge of the church. And so they had to make candles for the church also. And we don't have it down here, but another thing that's very interesting up there is how they made hosts for communion. You couldn't just go to so-and-so's church supply and get hosts. And so, beginning, they had two little things that just punched out host on the bread that they laid out. And then a little later on, got to the point, it looks like a waffle iron, and it has places, and then you poured your dough in there and pressed it down. And then a little later than that, it got to an electric one, where you could make your host and, you know, plug in electric rather than trying to do it in an oven. And one other thing is on here. Sister Linda thought she saw everything already, but I saw this. You may have seen something like this in your grandfather's house. I remember seeing it in my grandpa's house. And this was their form of entertainment, their television set. I think today the kids can get them for children, and they're those viewfinders where you can put in and see 3D. This is the same thing. You look through it, and then you have to adjust the picture to the point where you can see three-dimensional then, because there are two pictures on it, and that will give you that three-dimension. And this was a great entertainment for people in those days because they didn't have radios and things like that, so they used this as an entertainment. These are some of the things that we have upstairs on the 5th floor in the museum. It's called the community, what is it called? The Heritage Room, or the Community Heritage. And you are invited to come up. If it's locked, if Sister Pat Peters isn't in it, and it's locked, just come to my office and I can open it up and you can see these things besides another 2,000 items that we have cataloged, and enjoy seeing what was the past. And also there are things that are the present too up there for our community. So please feel welcome to come up and see some of the things that we have on display. And if you don't want to walk up or right up to 5th floor, we also have a heritage room down on the 2nd floor. But it is not as, doesn't have as many things as the one on the 5th floor museum has. So please feel welcome to come up.
Okay, how about a hand for that? Thank you so much for bringing those out and showing us today. Tomorrow we were going to have a presentation on Lake Galbraith. We had some state money to do a research project last summer. We were collecting data all summer. And unfortunately, the consultant who I used to work with, fortunately for him, he's expecting his first baby and due just about any time. And so it's really, we were hoping it would ended up working out, and it looks like it's not going to. So instead, as a backup, we had, kind of as a segue to this, a video we're going to be playing on something that's called biomimicry. So if you think of the changes 21st century, or 20th century, we had these kind of durable items made of natural materials, glass, plastic, metal, were very expensive, hard to replace. You only had one of them, what have you. Then we transitioned to the kind of age of chemistry and all these new materials and things that we were using that were all spectacular and much faster and more convenient. And then we found out that there are certain ramifications of using those and becoming more and more disposable, to the point where, you know, most of the things are plastic and assembled in China or whatever else. And we're now at the point where even the conversations in professional circles about resource use and recycling is that China very recently has essentially stopped accepting all recycling materials sent out from the port of Los Angeles, which is a huge amount of our materials was going to go back to Asia to be remanufactured into other products. And so now it's piling up at the port there and all across the United States. And so people are thinking, okay, what is the next step? And because we thought recycling was great, we're going to use that material over and over, and now that's kind of at a standstill. So we're kind of thinking maybe on the cusp of this kind of next stage of engineering and design. And biomimicry is one of the principles some of these engineers use to mimic engineering solutions found in nature. So if you think about it, life has been on Earth some 4 billion years or so. So the planet is that, a couple billion years for life. That is a lot of engineering years that have gone into a variety of chemical and very creative structures that have evolved throughout creation. And some of those we're able to apply for industrial products to improve the efficiencies, to do it in a much more efficient process. So there's a video we're going to be showing tomorrow kind of about the idea of biomimicry. And then Friday, you will not want to miss it, we have Earth Week Jeopardy. So we will need tables of people assembled, and these may be on the quiz Friday. So come expecting a nice game show atmosphere, and look forward to seeing you then. So thank you.